Have you ever been hit with a guilt trip so perfectly crafted that you couldn't even defend yourself without looking selfish? That moment when someone uses the people you love as weapons against your own boundaries, wrapping their demands in concern and family loyalty so thick you can barely breathe. I was sitting at my mother's 65th birthday dinner, enjoying pasta and what I thought was a peaceful evening, when my sister Jennifer looked me dead in the eye and said, "Think of Mom." 3 simple words that were supposed to erase my needs, my plans, my right to my own life, and for a moment, they almost did. Maybe you know that sister, that family member who's perfected the art of emotional manipulation, family dynamics. The one who volunteers your time, your space, your energy without asking, then acts hurt when you hesitate. The controlling family member who frames every request as if refusing makes you a terrible person, who uses phrases like "but we're family" and "think of Mom" like Katuta fail-free cards for boundary violations. I'd spent decades being the reliable one, the sister who always came through, the daughter with the big empty house who obviously had nothing better to do than accommodate everyone else's needs. And I was exhausted. But here's what nobody tells you about toxic family dinner moments that change everything. They don't announce themselves with trumpets. They happen over birthday cake and wine, in restaurants with soft lighting, when someone casually suggests you sacrifice your peace for their convenience and expects you to smile while doing it. This is the story of how "think of Mom" became the phrase that finally made me think of myself for once. How sister using guilt as a manipulation tactic stopped working the moment I realized I was allowed to say no. How the "think of Mom" manipulation lost its power when I chose my own well-being over performing family harmony. Because the truth nobody wants to say out loud is this: you can love your family and still refuse to be their doormat. You can honor your mother without erasing yourself. You can care deeply about people and still maintain boundaries that protect your peace. This is my family revenge story, except the revenge wasn't dramatic or cruel. It was simply choosing myself after decades of being chosen last. It was the quiet emotional power reversal that happens when you finally stop explaining yourself to people who were never really listening. And it started with 3 words at a birthday dinner that I'll never forget: "Think of Mom." Spoiler alert, I did think of her. And then I thought of me too, and that changed everything. The restaurant had that warm glow that makes everyone look like they're in a movie, soft lighting bouncing off wine glasses and the hum of conversation creating a cocoon of celebration. It was Mom's 65th birthday, and we'd chosen her favorite Italian place, the one with the handmade pasta and the waiter who always remembered she liked extra Parmesan. I arrived early, adjusting the wrapped present on the empty chair beside me, genuinely looking forward to an evening that felt, for once, uncomplicated. The birthday dinner with celebratory atmosphere seemed promising, the kind of night where old tensions could take a back seat to tiramisu and laughter. My sister Jennifer walked in 20 minutes late, as usual, trailing apologies and expensive perfume. She kissed Mom's cheek, squeezed Dad's shoulder, and gave me that smile, the one that looked warm from a distance but felt calculating up close. The family gathered, expectations of harmony thick in the air like the smell of garlic bread. Mom was radiant in her navy dress, the one she saved for special occasions, and Dad kept making terrible jokes that somehow got funnier with each glass of Chianti. I felt my shoulders relax, felt that protagonist hopes for a peaceful moment settle over me like a comfortable blanket. We ordered appetizers, argued good-naturedly about whether the calamari or bruschetta was better, and I found myself actually enjoying being there. My younger brother Mark was telling a story about his kid's soccer game, complete with dramatic reenactments that had Mom laughing until tears gathered in her eyes. This was the family I wanted to believe in, the one that could sit around a table and just be happy together, without agendas or scorekeeping or someone always trying to steer the ship. My emotional guard lowered the way it only does when you're surrounded by people you've known your entire life, when you think maybe, just maybe, tonight will be different. But there's something about family dynamics that's like muscle memory patterns so deeply ingrained that they play out even when everyone's trying their best to avoid them. I caught Jennifer watching me while Mom opened her gifts, and there was something in her expression I couldn't quite read. Not hostile exactly, but calculating, like she was waiting for the right moment to say something she'd been rehearsing. I shook it off, poured myself more wine, and told myself I was being paranoid. After all, this was Mom's night, and surely even Jennifer wouldn't turn a birthday celebration into another dark family drama episode. Surely we could have one evening that was just about cake and candles and celebrating the woman who'd given us life. It started so subtly I almost missed it. We were halfway through our entrees when Jennifer put down her fork with that particular deliberateness that meant she had something important to say. "So, I was thinking," she began, and my stomach tightened instinctively, "about Thanksgiving this year. Mom, you shouldn't have to host again. It's too much work at your age." Mom started to protest, saying she loved hosting, but Jennifer was already rolling forward like a train that had left the station. The sister shifts conversation subtly, steering it away from celebration and toward obligation, and suddenly we weren't talking about birthdays anymore, we were talking about my failures as a daughter. "I would host, obviously," Jennifer continued, dabbing her mouth with her napkin like she was in some kind of etiquette commercial, "but with the twins' schedule and David's work travel, it's just impossible. Which is why I thought," and here she turned to look directly at me, "you could do it this year. You have that big house, and it's not like you have kids to worry about." The phrase hung in the air for a moment before she delivered the kill shot. "Think of Mom. She's done this for us for 40 years. The least we can do is take the burden off her shoulders." And just like that, concern for our mother became a weapon aimed directly at my choices, my life, my supposedly empty house that should obviously be filled with relatives I hadn't agreed to host. The controlling family dynamics were right there, dressed up in cashmere and reasonable suggestions. Jennifer wasn't demanding, she was concerned. She wasn't criticizing, she was thinking of Mom. This emotional manipulation family technique was something she'd perfected over the years, wrapping her agenda in such pretty paper that objecting to it made you look selfish. Dad shifted uncomfortably in his chair, and Mark suddenly became very interested in his fettuccine. Mom looked between us with that expression she got when she knew a storm was brewing but didn't know how to stop it. And I sat there, fork suspended over my chicken piccata, feeling the familiar weight of guilt used as moral authority settling on my shoulders like a cape I'd never asked to wear. Think of Mom became the magic phrase, the trump card that Jennifer knew I couldn't argue with in front of the woman who'd raised us. Never mind that Mom hadn't actually asked for this. Never mind that Jennifer had somehow decided what Mom needed without consulting her. Never mind that my big empty house was actually my sanctuary, carefully built after years of living according to everyone else's expectations. The think of Mom manipulation was perfect, really bulletproof. How do you say no to helping your aging mother without looking like a monster? How do you point out that you're being manipulated when the manipulation is wrapped in filial devotion? Jennifer smiled at me across the table, waiting for my answer, and I could see in her eyes that she'd already won. Or at least, she thought she had. The comment delivered in front of everyone had the same effect as dropping ice water down someone's back, shocking, impossible to ignore, and designed to make you react in a way that would prove you were the problem. Jennifer kept that concerned expression plastered on her face, the one that said she was only trying to help, only thinking of family, only being reasonable. Mark looked down at his plate like the pasta might offer him an escape route. Dad cleared his throat and signaled the waiter for more wine, his go-to move when uncomfortable conversations started brewing. And Mom looked at me with this hopeful expression, like maybe Jennifer was right, maybe I could solve this problem, maybe I should just say yes and keep the peace. What made it worse was the emotional pressure without raised voices, the suffocating politeness of it all. If Jennifer had yelled, if she'd been openly hostile, I could have defended myself without looking unreasonable. But this? This was a masterclass in public manipulation. "I'm just trying to coordinate," Jennifer said with a slight laugh, like I was being difficult for not immediately agreeing. "It's not like I'm asking you to cook everything yourself. We'd all bring dishes. You just provide the space. For Mom." There it was again for Mom, as if my mother's happiness depended entirely on me opening my home to 20 relatives, half of whom I barely knew, for a holiday I'd been looking forward to spending quietly for once in my adult life. I felt my face getting hot, that particular flush that comes from being called out in public for not being generous enough, devoted enough, family-oriented enough. The protagonist's feelings minimized right there at the birthday table, reduced to logistics and empty square footage, as if my time, my peace, my boundaries were somehow less important than Jennifer's convenience. Shed framed it perfectly. I had the space, I didn't have kids, I should want to do this for our mother. Any objection I raised would sound selfish, petty, like I was choosing my own comfort over family unity. This toxic family dinner moment was something I'd experienced 100 times before, just in different variations, different requests, different ways of making me feel small. The worst part was watching everyone wait for my response, watching them expect compliance because that's what I'd always done before. Mark avoiding eye contact. Dad pretending his phone was suddenly fascinating. Mom looking hopeful but also slightly apologetic, like she knew this was awkward but also couldn't quite bring herself to tell Jennifer to back off. The compliance expected wasn't explicit. Nobody was holding a gun to my head, but it was there in every silence, every uncomfortable glance, every second that ticked by while I sat there trying to figure out how to say no without becoming the villain in this family revenge story that Jennifer was apparently directing. And Jennifer just smiled, confident and patient, because she'd done this dance with me enough times to know exactly how it would end. I set down my fork with the same careful precision Jennifer had used earlier, and something in that small gesture made everyone at the table go still. The protagonist stays composed in a way that probably looked calm from the outside but felt like standing at the edge of a cliff on the inside. I took a sip of water, dabbed my mouth with my napkin, and met Jennifer's expectant gaze with something she wasn't used to seeing from me: complete, unruffled neutrality. "That's an interesting idea," I said, my voice so even it could have been discussing the weather. No argument or emotional display, no defensive explanation about why my house wasn't actually a public venue, no justification for wanting my own space during the holidays. Jennifer's smile faltered slightly, just for a second, because she'd expected pushback. She'd armed herself for a fight, prepared her counterarguments about family obligation and Mom's advancing age and how I was being selfish. But I didn't give her anything to work with. "I'll think about it," I continued, reaching for my wine glass, "and let you know." The quiet acknowledgement was so anticlimactic that I could see the confusion rippling across her face. Mark looked up, surprised. Dad stopped pretending to check his phone. Even Mom seemed uncertain about what had just happened, like she'd braced for an explosion that never came. What nobody at that table understood was that I wasn't agreeing, I was deflecting. I'd learned over years of these family dynamics that fighting Jennifer Heaton only gave her ammunition, only made me look like the difficult one, the sister who couldn't just go along to get along. So instead, I smiled and changed the subject, asked Mom about her plans for her birthday weekend, complimented the restaurant's new dessert menu. Internal observation was happening behind my pleasant expression, though I was watching how quickly everyone relaxed once they thought the conflict was resolved, how readily they accepted my non-answer as capitulation. Jennifer tried once more, couldn't help herself. "So that's a yes, then. For Thanksgiving." And I looked at her with the same pleasant, impenetrable calm and said I'd think about it. "Let's not plan Mom's whole holiday calendar during her birthday dinner, okay?" I squeezed Mom's hand affectionately, and just like that, I'd made Jennifer look like the one disrupting the celebration, the one who couldn't let things go. The shift was so subtle that most people probably didn't even notice it, but I did. And more importantly, Jennifer did. Her jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, and she reached for her wine glass with just a little too much force. The silent revenge family dynamic was already beginning, and I was the only one who knew it had started. I drove home that night with the windows down, letting the cool air clear my head, and that's when the recognition of a long-standing family pattern finally crystallized into something I could actually see and name. It wasn't just this Thanksgiving thing, it was every holiday, every family emergency, every time someone needed something, and Jennifer somehow maneuvered it so that I was the one who had to provide it. When Dad had his hip surgery, who took 3 weeks off work to help with recovery. When Aunt Carol needed a place to stay during her divorce, whose guest room became her temporary home for 6 months. And every single time, the justification was the same: think of the family. Think of Mom. Don't be selfish. The realization that thinking of Mom means selfisher hit me somewhere around the intersection of 5th and Main, hard enough that I had to pull over for a moment. I sat there in my car, hands on the steering wheel, and counted up the years I'd spent being the family's go-to problem solver, the reliable one, the daughter who didn't have kids so obviously had unlimited time and resources to give to everyone else. Jennifer had 2 kids and a demanding job, so she was exempt. Mark was still finding himself at 38, so he got a pass. But me? I had that big empty house, that flexible work-from-home schedule, that apparently endless capacity to absorb whatever the family needed without complaint. Emotional clarity replaces obligation in moments like that, when you finally stop making excuses for people and start seeing the pattern for what it really is. This wasn't about helping family, it was about Jennifer maintaining control of the family narrative while I did all the actual work. She got to be the concerned daughter who organized everything, who thought of everyone, who cared so deeply about Mom's well-being. And I got to be the workhorse who provided the labor, the space, the emotional bandwidth that made Jennifer's vision of family harmony actually function. This emotional manipulation family system had been running smoothly for decades, and I'd been too busy being good to notice I was the one making it run. I restarted the car and drove the rest of the way home in silence, but it wasn't the heavy silence of defeat, it was the clear, sharp silence of decision to choose herself finally taking root. I thought about my house, the one Jennifer called big and empty like it was an accusation. It wasn't empty, it was peaceful. It was mine. Every piece of furniture chosen carefully, every room decorated exactly how I wanted it, every corner of it a refuge I'd built after years of living according to everyone else's preferences. And I was done apologizing for that. Done feeling guilty for having a life that didn't revolve around being available for whatever the family needed. Done letting think of Mom be the phrase that erased my own needs, my own boundaries, my own right to say no without being made to feel like a monster. The text came from Jennifer 3 days later, because of course it did. Hey. Just wanted to confirm Thanksgiving at your place. Mom is so excited. I'll send you the head count by next week. Love you. I stared at that message for a long moment, sitting on my couch with my coffee getting cold, and realized this was a moment where I either fell back into the old pattern or actually followed through on the clarity I'd found driving home from that birthday dinner. A calm but firm boundary set isn't dramatic in the movies, but in real life, it's terrifying. My hands actually shook a little as I typed my response. I won't be hosting Thanksgiving this year. But I hope you find a solution that works for everyone. No confrontation, no explanation, just a simple statement of fact. I didn't justify it with excuses about being busy or tired or having other plans. I didn't apologize for having needs that conflicted with Jennifer's agenda. I didn't offer alternatives or suggestions or ways to make it work. The emotional compliance withdrawn was as simple as hitting send and then, this is important, putting my phone face down on the coffee table and walking away. I made myself a fresh cup of coffee, opened my laptop, and got back to work on a project I'd been excited about. I didn't sit there refreshing my messages, didn't anxiously wait for her response, didn't let the anticipation of her reaction steal my peace. My phone started buzzing within minutes, texts, then a call I didn't answer, then more texts. Jennifer was in full crisis mode, her messages escalating from confused "Wait, what do you mean?" to concerned "Is everything okay? Are you upset about something?" to slightly accusatory "I don't understand why you're being difficult about this." But hey, race the thing about boundaries, they only work if you don't defend them to death. Every explanation becomes a negotiation, every justification becomes a foothold for someone to argue with. So I didn't engage. I sent one more message: I'm not available to host. That's my final answer. I hope Mom has a wonderful Thanksgiving. And then I muted the conversation. The power shifts quietly when you stop explaining yourself to people who were never really listening anyway. I could imagine Jennifer calling Mark, calling Mom, maybe even calling Dad, trying to figure out what had happened to her reliable sister, the one who always came through, the one who could be counted on to sacrifice her own comfort for family harmony. This silent revenge family moment wasn't about punishing her, it was about finally choosing myself after decades of being chosen last. And the wild thing? Once I'd actually done it, once I'd actually said no and meant it, the relief was almost physical. My shoulders relaxed. My jaw unclenched. The knot in my stomach that had been there since that birthday dinner finally loosened. This female empowerment story was happening in real time, and I was the one writing it now. Jennifer showed up at my house 2 days later, unannounced, with Mom in tow. I watched them pull into my driveway through the living room window and felt a flash of anger so pure it almost made me laugh. Of course Shed brought Mom, the ultimate guilt weapon, the one person whose disappointment could still make me question everything. The attempts to reinforce guilt were written all over Jennifer's face as I opened the door, that concerned sister expression Shed perfected, the one that said I'm only here because I love you and am worried about you. We need to talk, she said, like this was an intervention instead of a manipulation. Mom looked uncomfortable, standing on my porch in her cardigan, clearly unsure about being used as emotional leverage but also unable to resist Jennifer's insistence that this was for my own good. I let them in because refusing would have made me look unstable, and Jennifer was counting on that. We sat in my living roomy carefully decorated, peaceful living room that Jennifer kept calling empty, and she launched into her prepared speech about family obligations and traditions and how worried everyone was about me. The emotional appeals intensify when control starts slipping, and Jennifer was grasping at every tool in her arsenal: concern about my mental health, reminders of family history, even tears that looked almost genuine. I don't understand what's changed, she said, and I could hear real confusion when control fails in her voice. You've always been there for us. You've always understood that family comes first. Why are you being like this now? Mom reached over and patted my hand, and I could see her own conflict. She didn't want to pressure me, but she also didn't want family discord, and Jennifer had positioned this whole thing as me causing problems rather than me finally setting boundaries. This dark family drama was reaching its peak, and I had a choice: cave to the pressure, or hold my ground even when it meant disappointing people I loved. I took a breath and looked at both of them: Mom, who'd never learned to say no to her own children, and Jennifer, who'd built her entire identity around being the family coordinator while volunteering other people's resources. Nothing's changed except that I'm finally being honest, I said quietly. I don't want to host Thanksgiving. I never did. I just always said yes because it was easier than dealing with this. Jennifer's face went through several emotions at once: shock, anger, that loss of moral leverage that happens when someone finally calls out manipulation for what it is. Shed expected me to crumble, expected Mom's presence to guilt me into compliance. But watching her flounder, seeing her realize that her usual tactics weren't working anymore, I felt something unexpected: not triumph, just calm. Just the simple, solid certainty that I'd made the right choice, even if it made everyone uncomfortable for a while. Jennifer ended up hosting Thanksgiving at her house, and the world didn't end. Mom had a lovely time, from what I heard, and nobody died from the inconvenience of adjusting their plans. I spent the holiday volunteering at a community kitchen in the morning and then having a quiet dinner with 2 friends who'd also opted out of family obligations that year. We ate Thai food, watched old movies, and laughed until our sides hurt, and somewhere in that laughter, I realized that love doesn't require self-sacrifice the way I'd been taught. Real love makes space for everyone's needs, including mine. It doesn't demand that one person constantly shrink so others can expand. The hardest lesson was learning that guilt is not care, no matter how much it masquerades as concern. Jennifer genuinely believed she was looking out for family when she volunteered my house, my time, my energy for her vision of what Thanksgiving should be. She'd learned it from somewhere, maybe from Mom, maybe from generations of women before her who'd been taught that caring meant giving until you had nothing left. But intention doesn't erase impact. Good intentions wrapped around manipulation are still manipulation. And I'd spent too many years confusing guilt with love, obligation with devotion, compliance with family loyalty. What surprised me most was how quickly family pressure loses power when refused consistently. Jennifer tried a few more times over the following month, smaller asks, testing to see if my no was permanent or just temporary rebellion. Could I watch the twins next Saturday? Could I help organize Mom's retirement party? Could I contribute to Aunt Carol's birthday gift? Each time, I evaluated the request honestly. Did I want to do it? Did I have the time and energy? Would saying yes come from genuine desire or old patterns of guilt? And when the answer was no, I said no. Not with anger or explanation, just simple, clear boundaries that I finally learned I was allowed to have. The emotional power reversal in our family didn't happen overnight, but it happened. Jennifer slowly stopped treating me like an extension of her organizational system and started treating me like a separate person with my own priorities. Mom learned to ask what I wanted instead of assuming I'd go along with whatever was decided. And I learned the most important lesson of all: choosing yourself breaks the cycle, not just for you but for everyone watching. My younger cousin told me months later that seeing me set boundaries had given her permission to do the same with her own controlling family dynamics. This female empowerment story wasn't just mine. Anna Marie, it was rippling out, showing other women that you can love your family and still maintain your dignity, that think of mom doesn't have to mean forgetting yourself, and that the most radical act of care is sometimes simply saying no and meaning it. So here's the question I need you to sit with tonight. Really sit with: how many times have you said yes when you meant no because someone invoked family loyalty? How many times have you sacrificed your peace, your plans, your boundaries because refusing felt too hard, too selfish, too risky? I'm not talking about the normal give and take of healthy relationships. I'm talking about that specific manipulation where your needs are always the ones that get dismissed, where think of mom or think of the family really means forget about yourself. If you felt something tighten in your chest reading this story, if you recognized yourself in the birthday dinner or the guilt trips or the assumption that your time belongs to everyone but you, then you already know what I'm about to say. It's time to stop. Think about the last time someone volunteered your resources, your time, your home, your energy without asking. Did you speak up? Or did you swallow your objection because causing conflict felt worse than the resentment building in your chest? Here's what I learned sitting in my living room with Jennifer and mom, finally saying the truth out loud after years of compliance. The discomfort of setting a boundary is temporary. The resentment of not setting one is permanent. You cannot maintain genuine relationships built on guilt and manipulation. You cannot love people well when you're disappearing to accommodate them. And you absolutely cannot break generational cycles of emotional manipulation family dynamics by continuing to participate in them. The silent revenge family story I lived wasn't about punishing Annie, it was about finally understanding that choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's survival. It's the oxygen mask principle: you can't help anyone if you're suffocating. And maybe that's your story too. Maybe you're reading this and seeing your own Jennifer, your own pattern of being the reliable one who gets taken for granted, your own years of thinking of everyone else while nobody thought of you. If that's you, if any of this resonates in that uncomfortable way, that means it's hitting close to home. Then I want you to know you're not the problem. The expectation that you should constantly sacrifice your well-being for others' convenience is the problem. This female empowerment story, this dark family drama that became my wake-up call and then became my freedom, it's not unique to me. It happens in families that look perfect from the outside, to women who seem like they have it all together, in relationships where everyone assumes you're fine with arrangements you never actually agreed to. The controlling family patterns you're living with don't have to be your forever. Guilt loses its power when you stop accepting it as currency. Family pressure dissolves when you refuse to carry it. And love, real, genuine, healthy love, actually gets stronger when it's built on honesty instead of obligation. So what are you going to do with that information? What's the first small boundary you can set, the first time you can think of yourself without apologizing for it? If this story made you feel less alone, if it gave you language for something you've been experiencing but couldn't quite name, I'd love for you to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. These stories about real people finding their way from guilt to freedom, from people pleasing to self-respect, they matter because they remind us we're not crazy for wanting better. Your boundaries matter. Your peace matters. Your life matters, even when family dynamics suggest otherwise. Let's keep this conversation going, keep sharing these truths that nobody wants to say at the dinner table but everyone needs to hear. Because somewhere out there, someone is sitting at a birthday dinner being told to think of mom, and they need to know it's okay to think of themselves too. That choosing yourself isn't betrayal, it's the beginning of actually being able to show up authentically for the people you love. And maybe, just maybe, your story can be the permission someone else needs to finally set themselves free.